Ilene Grossman-Bailey, and I'm a senior archaeologist with Richard Grubb & Associates. My co-author, David Strohmeier, won't be joining us right now, but he is also an archaeologist with Richard Grubb & Associates. And Richard Grubb & Associates recently conducted 3 phases of archaeological research at a proposed residential development in Hazlet, New Jersey. The Phase 1 archaeological survey identified the Highview Prehistoric site on an upland peninsular terrace adjacent to a tributary of Flat Creek and near the main stem of Flat Creek as well. And the confluence of the 2 streams is approximately 400 feet to the north of the site. The site is just under a half acre in size, and you're looking at a portion of the site in Locus 2, which I will be talking a little bit more about. And here are some representative artifacts. In this presentation, I refer to cultural historical periods that archaeologists use as a way to describe pre-contact Native American occupation. The periods are based on a variety of information sources, including radiocarbon dates and artifacts. The Archaic period is from about 8,000 BC to about 1,000 BC, and the Woodland period was from about 1,000 BC to about AD 1500. And specifically, we're talking about the Late Archaic period briefly. That was about 3,000 BC to about 1,000 BC, and the Middle Woodland period, which we'll also be talking about 500 BC to 8900. Late Woodland period from about 8900 to about 1500. The site is located south of Connisconk Point on the same peninsula jutting into the Raritan Bay that also contains one of New Jersey's most famous shell midden sites, the Keyport Shell Heap. It's located south of Route 35 in the former Holy Family School ball fields. So here are some plans for the development. Locus 1, which the site is actually in two loci. Locus 1 is toward the north. 125 feet to the south is Locus 2, as you can see here. Locus 2 contained 4 activity areas separated by negative shovel test pits or STPs. During 3 phases, the site was delineated and explored by the excavation of 124 STPs and 24 excavation units, 3-foot square or 5-foot square. And initially, 38 pre-contact artifacts were located in the 2 loci during the Phase 1 survey. As a result of the 3 phases, over 1,800 artifacts were recovered, consisting of lithic materials and ceramics. Most artifacts were lithic materials or stone, but also 21 sherds and tiny fragments of pre-contact Native American ceramics were found. Firecracked rock or heated rock, also called FCR, is the most common artifact that we found. So we were very interested in, here's a map that shows you, here's our site, and here are some of the sites nearby. We were very interested in looking at several sites in nearby drainages to determine the relationship of the Highview site to other sites in the area. There were no sites located in the Flat Creek drainage in which the site is positioned, but there were others in nearby. As I mentioned, the Keyport Shell Heap was located to the north in nearby Union Beach, and it's these 3 sites here, 28 MO, 9, 10, and 11, that comprise known parts of the shell midden. And it consisted of a massive oyster shell mound or mounds with associated artifacts. So I just want to talk briefly, in his monumental 2005 study of Monmouth County Native American history, my late colleague Paul Boyd included the Hazlet Highview site area in this what's called the Centerville Hazlet Homedale geographic cluster, a grouping of 9 sites. This included several likely procurement sites, as well as sites of greater complexity that may have been, microband or even larger campsites. One of these is site 28 MO 56 right here, which was a multi-component pre-contact Native American site that's now the location of a movie theater. This was one of several sites found by avocational archaeologist Ralph Phillips. The site contained diagnostic artifacts from the early Middle Archaic period and on, and included also pre-contact Native American pottery or ceramic sherds, net sinkers, hammerstones, and other things like that. The site was never subjected to a full archaeological survey, and information is limited. Two nearby sites to the project area is this one, Martyr South site, which is 28 MO 237. Where's my cursor? There it is. And this one, Riverbend site, 28 MO 347. These two sites were excavated in recent times, and the Van Martyr South site, 237, is considered a temporary woodland period campsite. Pre-contact Native American ceramic and a small quantity of jasper and argillite flakes were recovered. The other site, Riverbend, is a two-locus satellite camp occupied periodically from the early Archaic to late Woodland periods. Two distinct activity areas of lithic reduction and cooking were defined at that site. Here are some of the historic references to the sites in the area that I mentioned. The Keyport shell heap was recorded by Charles Rowell in the late 19th century and was later described by Alanson Skinner and Max Schrabisch, along with some of the large piles of oyster shells, projectile points, and pre-contact Native American ceramic sherds have been recovered at these two sites. We're not sure what the connection is between the Highview site and these other sites, but we're certainly interested in considering what it might be. Okay. I always love historic maps, but the site was part of farms in the 19th century and the 20th century, and before the Holy Family School was built. The project location was owned by the Omak family in the late 19th century. As I've said, the site consists of two loci or smaller areas. Locus 1, shown here, and you can see it kind of blown up here, is fairly small and yielded 107 artifacts during the three phases, including 5 tools, a biface, a scraper, 3 flake tools, an untyped ceramic sherd, 38 stone flakes, and 62 FCR. I said that's heated rock. Locus 2 was much larger, and here you see the two maps again, and consisted of 4 distinct activity areas. It was located about 125 feet south of Locus 1. 1,677 artifacts were recovered in Locus 2. And if you look at these different activity areas, the areas A and C were larger with more artifacts. In area A, we identified a hearth feature and recovered just over 1,600 artifacts, which is over 60% of the site artifacts. We recovered 17 tools, including 3 projectile points, 3 bifaces, hammerstones, groundstone tool, scraper, and 6 flake tools. The ceramic assemblage dated to the middle to late Woodland period, and we also recovered about 200 stone flakes and well over 800 FCR. Area C identified a small pit feature, and we recovered 355 artifacts, including 11 tools, two bifaces, a groundstone tool, scraper, chopper, flake tools, as well as stone flakes and FCR. A greater amount of FCR was found in Area A, while Area C had a higher percentage of stone flakes. This is pretty similar to the patterning that you see at the Riverbend site that I talked about before. Areas B and D, over here and here, were smaller like Locus 1, with fewer artifacts. Area B had 138 artifacts, including 2 tools, and Area D only yielded about 68 artifacts, which also included two tools and also 2 sherds of possible late Woodland ceramics and other items. Okay, So here is another view of the distribution of artifacts in the 4 activity areas of Locus 2. I know it looks kind of like a dog, and the head of the dog is area A with the hearth area and most of the artifacts. Area C is the kind of the hind leg of the site. Also had a feature and a lot of artifacts, and areas B and D not so much. We don't know if these different areas were occupied at the same time or at different times. So here is a representation of some of the site tools that were recovered. As I said, there were 3 projectile points, including this bare island point, which I'll be mentioning again later, and also this triangle point will come up again later. 32 tools were recovered, including the 3 projectile points, bifaces, scrapers, flake tools, and hammerstones. The range of tools gives an idea of the range of work that the Native American occupants performed, such as cooking, hide and bone preparation, hunting, woodworking, and grinding grain at the site. Okay, so most of the artifacts we found actually are rocks heated in a fire, FCR. We found over 1,100 FCR at the site. Now they tell us that cooking and heating were going on. So FCR is a kind of artifact that is very homely and unloved, and is not usually what people are hoping to find at a site. But it has potential to tell us a lot about foodways, trade and exchange, and site activities. What were they cooking? We really don't know all of it, but one fragment of FCR from the hearth feature had evidence of the use of maize, that is corn, and they may have been using it for stone boiling a soup or stew. We'll be telling you a little bit more about that. We also recovered 21 sherds and fragments of ceramics, but they were very limited and worn. Actually, these are the best pieces that we found. Some of them were very, very tiny. Only one fragment was found in Feature 5, and the recovered ceramics were associated with the middle to late Woodland period and likely used for cooking or storage, or maybe both. The fact that we found ceramics also suggests a degree of sedentism, that people were hanging out a bit longer at this location to be able to use ceramics. So here's a map that shows you Feature 5, the hearth feature. And we're very interested in subsurface cultural features in that they can provide more detailed information, that they're the preserved location of human activities where artifacts, soils with residues from use, charcoal for carbon dating, could all be associated in one location or place, and then we can look at these together. And at the Highview site, we actually identified 2 features. Feature 5, the remnant hearth, is located in Locus 2, Area A. The feature measures about 4 to 5 feet in diameter and about 1 foot deep, depending on based on the distribution of artifacts. About 55 artifacts are recovered from the feature, and some of these were piece plotted, as you can see, the PP. So these were actually recorded in situ and documented their locations to try to understand the distribution of artifacts at the site in the future. Most were FCR with a small number of stone flakes and 1 sherd of middle woodland period ceramic. The Bear Island point that I showed you previously was also found near the feature, but not in it. 1 FCR fragment with a starch grain of maize and 1 other attributed grain was recovered in the feature. So we of course wanted to get better dates for the site. That was one of our objectives in our work. We took samples of charcoal from the 2 features. Anyway, 2 charcoal samples were submitted to Beta Analytic for AMS radiocarbon dating, but neither one yielded useful dates. 1 sample had too small quantity for dating, so it was very small. And the second charcoal sample was contaminated with coal and yielded data of about 18 to 19,000 years ago, which we felt was far too old for the site and likely due to coal contamination. A second feature was located in Locus 2 Area C. This was a possible truncated basin-shaped pit that yielded about 10 artifacts, FCR and stone flakes. Nearby artifacts from the same excavation unit include a bifaced hammerstone and groundstone tool. The charcoal from this feature, which we also attempted to date, yields a date that was far too recent and probably it indicates something intrusive. That it ranged from about 1700 to about 1942 once it was calibrated. So that date too didn't quite work out. Starch grain residue on a quartzite groundstone tool located near the feature consisted of 2 maize, 2 grass, and 2 unattributed starch grains. So that was a pretty interesting find there. Okay, and here are some of the example of some of the groundstone tools and hammerstones that were recovered at the site. So I think of these as the hardworking kind of micro style dirty jobs tools. And they're what people need to get the work done. They may be made from local cobbles, pebbles, things that are found nearby, and they can provide a lot of information about what was going on at the site. I feel like they need to get more respect because they often have plant remains if they were used for grinding grain or seeds. They can tell us more directly about what people were eating or doing. So as I mentioned, these are some of the same tools that you'll notice. We sent out 6 artifacts for starch grain analysis and 2 tools for protein residue analysis, and these are depicted here. These are the ones that we sent for protein residue, and the remaining tools were sent for starch grain analysis. No protein residue was identified on those tools. However, 2 of the artifacts did yield maize and other starch. The groundstone tool was located, this one here, was located near feature 10, and the FCR piece was from feature 5. And the reddened appearance and the way it's cracked is what tells us that this was heated in a fire. So I wanted to point out where these two artifacts were recovered. The piece of FCR was recovered here in Area A, and the groundstone tool with maize was recovered here in Area C. So this, even though it's very limited, this is evidence of maize use across the site, and that's one of the things that we learned from this. So I'm so sorry. I froze for a second there. Maize is typically thought of as late Woodland period, but recent work in the Delaware Valley, like that of Adam Heinrich at Gloucester City, and my work in Camden at a site, are pushing dates earlier. But when I looked at Paul Boyd's work in Monmouth County, he found that that evidence of pre-contact maize use in Monmouth County is pretty rare. He mentions 2 sites in all of Monmouth County with maize, and also Jesse Walker identified it at the Gully site, which is closer to Middlesex County. And this slide shows you some micrographs of the maize starch grains, so you can see what they look like. A and B is the maize starch from the groundstone tool fragment, and C is the maize starch grain recovered from the quartzite FCR. So B actually shows the maize starch grain with a scooped center that's typical of processing damage from grinding or pounding. There's another form of evidence that that maize may have been being processed at the site. So one other type of analysis that we did at the site on artifacts was examining some of the points and scrapers and chipstone tools for evidence of use wear. And these are the chipstone tools that were sent out for use wear analysis to Ohio State University. And 4 of them had notable evidence of use wear for hunting or butchery. So this slide shows you the one artifact, the triangular projectile point, and it shows you the use wear on the projectile point. Its tip was broken through an impact fracture from its use as a projectile and provides evidence for hunting. Wear on the point also shows that it was used for other bone and hide work, as you can see in some of these pictures here. Okay, so what is the site about? The Highview Prehistoric Site is defined as a short-term transient camp occupied seasonally on a limited basis during multiple occasions, including summer or fall months during the Late Archaic and Middle to Late Woodland periods. The seasonality, the idea of seasonality is based on the recovery of maize starch. So we're assuming that because they were using maize, that maize is something that's harvested in the summer, but of course it can also be stored, and it could have been used during a different season. The periods of occupation are based on the diagnostic lithic tools and ceramics. Unfortunately, we weren't able to obtain any good AMS dates. Cooking, hunting, game, and plant food processing, and tool manufacture and other activities were conducted on a limited basis in the 2 loci of the site. Locus 2, Area A, contained over half of the site artifacts, a disarticulated hearth feature, and concentrated FCR, as well as a maize starch. Locus 2, Area C, a possible pit feature, and a concentration of stone flakes. It also had maize starch. And as I was saying before, Locus 1 and Locus 2 areas B and D had fewer artifacts, no features, and were probably satellite stations or work areas related to the other areas. We really don't know if these locations were occupied all at the same time or at slightly different times, and that was one of the things we had hoped to find out, but we don't know. The overall assemblage included just over 1,800 prehistoric artifacts. The lithic materials that we found at the site, although we found a variety of lithic materials, as you probably saw in some of those slides, it was dominated by quartz, and the main artifact type that we recovered was firecracked rock. Starch grain analysis yielded evidence of maize, grasses, and unknown starches on 2 artifacts in 2 areas of the site. So Linda Perry, who did the starch grain analysis, said that led her to believe that there's probably use across the site, but we just found it preserved in 2 locations. Evidence of hunting and animal bone, hide tool use were based on tool microwear analysis. We had no evidence of shellfish exploitation. No shells were recovered, and we're fairly far from the shoreline. However, when Kristen and I were talking the other day, she was saying that oral histories have described how people would have dried, have harvested shellfish at the shoreline and then dried it and removed it to other locations. And that certainly could have been happening. We don't have any evidence of it, but we don't know for sure like what other foods or things that were being eaten at the site. And we don't know if the same people were living at Highview site or the nearby Van Marters or Riverbend sites, also 2 sites where they didn't find any shellfish. May have been harvesting the shells at places like Keyport at other times, and maybe like importing the dried oysters to their location where they were then going to cook it and camp out. or maybe carry it to other locations. Okay, so in closing, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank people, first of all, the ASNJ for inviting me to come in and speak about the site, the RGA staff, including our the crew chiefs who oversaw the work in the site. Archaeology is collaborative, and a lot of people worked on this project. Material culture analysts Tara Erdreich and Danielle Cathcart, as well as Michael Gall and Catherine Smirsky for helping with the report. I also want to acknowledge Justine McKnight, who did macrobotanical analysis that we didn't get much out of, but she still did that. Linda Perry, who did the starch grain analysis, the protein residue analysis was done by Paleo Research, and then the Ohio State University people did the lithic analysis. Again, we sent out we sent out charcoal for carbon dating. It didn't get any results, but we do appreciate the help of data analytic. Most of the artifacts are going to be curated at the Monmouth County Historical Association in Freehold, and we'll be arranging for that curation to happen soon. And there will also be a display of artifacts at the clubhouse of the proposed development. So thank you very much.